Hello, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to what's going to be hopefully a very engaging webinar. Um, and we're following on from the last webinar we did on land-led schemes. And as everyone filters in, we're expecting about 70 people this morning. Andrew, why did you want to lead on to this from where we were last?
Good morning, Christopher. Good morning, everybody. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a cold the last couple of days, so bear with me and my kind of croaky voice, but we'll try and get through this. Yes, well, we did a kind of a land-led scheme, didn't we, in ProVal and then LandVal, and we're looking at how our clients are doing more land-led schemes and how they manage that, and predominantly our product Sql, our project management system, has always been kind of used for mainly, maybe Section 106, maybe kind of projects that are kind of there at a certain point, and then perhaps the appraisals are board approved, and then kind of they start the project management. But obviously, as the kind of sector's slightly changing, the shift of emphasis is a bit more on land-led schemes. And my background in the past has been land buying, sourcing land, doing that whole process. There's a whole raft of information and activity that goes on there that really should be tracked and managed and should be shown and seen. And speaking to clients over the last year or so, is going to then working with them on how to track that in Sql. So I've got a kind of an example that we've got in Sql that I think it's worth exploring, perhaps having a bit of Q&A, a bit of questions. So it's like project management is managing that process, isn't it? But managing it at whenever you want to start it. And with Sql, you can configure it to track and follow that process. So it brings another part of the development process into the project management side, and then it can be tracked and followed through, really. So that's the thought process.
Yeah, absolutely. And as Andrew said, we want to know how you're using it, and we want to know what your challenges in this area are. So please do let us know. And there you're going to find some handouts. There's 3 handouts or 4 handouts here. So the first one is a Sql Business Case. So this is just a really good overview of the level of functionality that SQL can bring and what value that represents to a team operating without it. So that's very handy for people, especially when they're making the case internally to have a system like this. And then some of our consultancy services, just that will really help the development teams along, like the appraisal assumptions report, viability workshops, and the SQL coaching projects that Andrew's been doing for the last few years.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm picking up on that. I mean, we're working, I've now set up in SDS a kind of consultancy side of the business that we can support our clients a little bit more than perhaps we've done in the past, although we've always done some kind of consultancy through David and the team before, and I've been at SDS for 12 years now, and my background is kind of land buying and that development process hands-on. So the team that I've set up is really kind of predominantly kind of doing viability workshops, looking at how to use ProVal, LandVal efficiently and supporting on that. But it kind of occurred to me fairly recently that there are a lot of clients are not getting the best out of SQL. So, and it's one because there's you're busy doing the day job, you've got this big system that has been bought, and you may be only using part of it, and the intention was to use a lot more of it, and then key people leave, or you're just busy to actually get it set up correctly. So I've got a team that are working with, well, we must be about 15 projects now across our client base that we are supporting, helping, coaching them to get the best out of SQL. And that's either on a kind of we're doing it for you basis. You tell us how you want to kind of get it set up, what's your strategy. And I think it's really useful to get a a document to say, this is your strategy of how you're going to use SQL, and then put that down in writing and then stick by it, and then say, this is the way we are approaching our developments. So whether it's, we're getting board approved from our appraisal, and then we upload it into SQL, which is I would say the traditional or the boring way or the standard way of using the software. And then, from there you're tracking the project, but it's just trying to bring in those other elements that your teams are now faced and are doing, and bringing those into SQL at an earlier stage. So let's yep.
Yeah, I think we should get into it now. I think everyone who's here is here. I'm going to make you the presenter now, Andrew.
Yep. Okay. Here he says, let's show my screen. Oh, hang on. Let's make sure we got the right one.
It's a rather messy desktop there, Andrew.
Oh, is it? Can you see that one? Which can you see now?
I can.
Right, that's cleaner, is it?
Yes.
Thank you. Right, okay, so that's me. You can see that. What we're going to talk about today is our product, SQL. Couple of things perhaps talk about that's happening. There was a new version out. I was hoping, or coming out, should I say, I was hoping to actually show that, but it's still in testing, so I don't want to kind of go through something that's not quite ready and finished yet. So there's a big update on SQL and Proval that we're doing, and it should be coming out fairly soon. It's in final testing with the team in the office or wherever they are. I think some of them are back in the office actually. So we're trying to get that out. Basically, one of the big improvements to the software, and I've got a screenshot of it which I can show you a bit later, is that you'll be able to do some calculations now in SQL. So MPV wise, internal rate of return, loan repayback, that kind of thing is traditionally being displayed in SQL. Obviously updated from the cash flow from the updated monthly spend, but not actually on income, as in kind of the property section of rents, etc. So that is an engine that's been put into SQL now, which is testing the team to actually make sure that it's kind of correct before it goes out. So it's in final testing, but that'll be a really good addition to we can work fully in SQL. So obviously at the top here we've got our appraisal system, viability, land val, proval, land val more geared to the private sector, view looking at land. But if you have got more land-led teams, then it's definitely worth looking at that for those, especially if they've come like I have from the private sector, used to a kind of more of the back of the fact packet kind of bit of system. Then land val is the one for you on that, which will work alongside proval, not replacing one or the other. It's just a slightly different focus of what you're looking at in a residual rather than proval, which is the obviously long-term position and long-term cash flow over a number of years. Both those can be sucked into SQL at a point that you say, and SQL is our project management system that then tracks, follows, and reports on your schemes. And the new addition of this is we've got a sales element now, which is, I would call it a module called Home Match, which works in the cloud, and it interacts and talks with this new version that's coming out to the property section in SQL. So your dedicated sales team can work in their own system, configure that the way they want, but it'll talk the key elements back to SQL and give you the reporting. So we're going to touch on that on the second half of this. This is part one, so a bit of a demonstration of SQL, and happy to take questions and go from there if there are any. So hopefully, Chris, tell me, can you see SQL now? Because sometimes I have to restart it and redo it, but
yeah, I can see it, no problem.
And perhaps, Chris, you can ask me some questions if you want. It's always nice.
Well, I'm managing so many development projects.
Exactly.
I'm full of ideas.
Okay. Oh.
Everyone listening, please help me out here, please.
Come on.
Send me some questions.
Right. So this is
give Andrew a grilling. Let's make that the priority today.
Quite easy when you've got a head cold. Right. So this is SQL. Okay. Starting point of SQL. open it up, and ideally it will be telling you as a project manager, as a senior manager, what is happening with your projects. So the idea on the top left-hand corner is to say, these are the projects that I have in my database, and we'll give you some kind of nice indication that what is happening on the key elements. So the key elements are obviously the cash flow. So that's CF is cash flow, WF is workflow. Might be quite small on your screen, but I can't really size it any differently. But and we use the traffic lights, green, amber, and red. Obviously, amber is saying that yes, it's in some tolerance, you're okay, but it's in that tolerance. Should be aware of it, but it's not out of balance. And then obviously red clearly is either out of balance or is a task that needs to be completed. You set a date or time for that task, and it hasn't been done in that point, so therefore we can display it for you. Fairly simple, but it's effective. So if you've got some unbalanced cash flows, they're here. If you've got some tasks that are not completed or coming up, so we do give you an indication of what's coming up. So here then, if you've got some time things to do in your land by a certain time, you can set those timings and you can then refer it to it and say, right, okay, we've got this coming up this week. Let's make sure we got this done. So this is where you can start configuring it and start thinking about a standardization of what you want to achieve by when. Okay, so it's just kind of unpicking and put every scenario in there, so you've got that tracked and followed, because there's so much to do in planning now. Pre-planning meetings, you know, all the surveys, all the site investigations that we have to do, you know, all that can be kind of tracked and put into your system. But again, it's your system. It's up to you. It's just an example and just things that we're talking to with clients. So if I go into one of these, and I'll just pick the one that says home match. So this is a kind of a configuration of a bit more detailed than a standard SQL setup that we would kind of do. If you haven't seen SQL before, at the top you've got the kind of various different sections that we have in a standard kind of installation. Whether you use them or not, they're there because you can grow into the system. And indeed, we've sold, we've got about 150 clients across our kind of portfolio, ranging from kind of local authorities to big housing RPs, housing associations, to the smaller ones as well. So you don't have to be a multiple scheme to get the benefit out of it. 2 or 3 schemes, you can clearly get the benefit of capturing, holding information. And it's always our brief when Phil wrote this, actually Phil Shelton wrote this 17-18 years ago when he was working with his father back then, was to get rid of those Excel spreadsheets, bring everything into one place, and you can easily visually see it and then access it. So that's where it was born from. And we worked with Orbit to track, follow what their development processes are, and to mirror and match that. So you'll see a lot of things in here that you go, yeah, we do that. Yeah, we do that. That's fine. That's the whole idea. We do it over there to here. It's bringing it all into one place that multiple people can access, and then you can easily get the information into some kind of report. That's it. He's had enough. The cat's had enough.
No, he's trying to get in.
No, he's going
outside the door.
More the merrier. Right, okay, so front screen, top screen here, we've got the different sections. You've got project detail, front screen. You've got the working cash flow that's going to be updated from your finance system on a monthly basis. You've got the appraisal. This is where we bring it in from a stage or gateway, and it doesn't have to be when it's board approved. It can be an earlier process. I'm saying it should be, I think it should be an earlier process, because as soon as you've done your kind of initial appraisal and you're kind of talking about the scheme and it's starting to come alive, whether you're bidding for something or putting a tender in or doing an offer, then why not track it within SQL? Why not have that level of detail in there to see what activity work you're doing and how successful you are, and what's the learnings from that process that we can kind of share with the business. You've got the workflow. Again, tracking that workflow, what workflow is correct, whether it's pre-contract, pre-planning meetings, was it's a Section 106 project that you're working on, or it's a land-led scheme and there's a tender process that you're going through. So you can kind of configure all the different kind of scenarios that you would have, and then you can adjust it as you wish, or kind of add notes to it. And then Chris is smiling. Someone's caught his attention.
Oh, one of our customers, Terry Hibbert, says she's quoted you saying flattery from some of our customers. How about no comments? And Terry has gone on to say she needs to basically SDS are always helpful. Any issues and webinars have been great listening to as well.
Oh, that's nice. There you go. Pat on the back. Thank you very much. Right. Okay. Let's make sure this is good. Right. So people about, obviously, your different kind of term here. People is about your contractors. This is about who you're using on your schemes. Are they still on your framework, and a bit of history about them, and set some KPIs. Remember those KPIs that we used to have? But we're coming back into it. Some standard KPIs, not a whole raft of them, but just some that you could internally track, follow, monitor. So you've got some different information. And then lastly is your property. So property is about, obviously, the properties, the units that you are capturing different information into one source string, and then sharing it with the organization or uploading it into your housing management system. So you can see it's quite a powerful, has quite a lot of information SQL can hold. And it is about the setup. And yes, we've sold clients this over the years, and they may have only started using the cash flow and the project view, and they've been stuck on that position because of team dynamics, time, pressure, and it's easy to get an Excel spreadsheet or whatever. But if we can help you bring that out and bring it into SQL, you should be more efficient. And I think over this kind of lockdown position, when people are kind of working in isolation as such, then I think a system like this is more beneficial, that you can share across kind of different households quite easily when you're working a little bit in remotely from each other rather than in the office. And indeed, that I think that's borne out with the work that we're doing with clients, to helping them. Not, we can give you wonderful coaching, training. This is how you do it. Yes, you don't need to use our consultancy service. All our software is configurable by you. With a bit of training, with a bit of help and a bit of support, you can do it. But if you haven't got the capacity, the time to do that, we can help you. Okay, we are pretty stacked on doing that, but we can help you. Just sit with you, understand what you're trying to achieve from it, and then recommend how you use SQL and where's the information go. Okay, that's enough of me rambling. Let's have a look. So here at the top here, you've got the scheme name. You've got the status of what the cash flow is, key element, and the workflow. So you can see within the project what's happening. And then I would, in the middle section here, is give you it's a free text space basically that allows you to put some detail in about the scheme, so it can come alive a little bit. So here you can create headings that are fixed. You can then put those links in to where they are, or indeed you can drop a diagram in. It's an SQL database environment. It's very flexible. You can either embed a document in here so you can see it, or you can create a link to where it resides. So you can then see here, and you can then go off, and it will go off to the site drawings, updated drawings, latest versions drawings, things like that. And it can obviously link to your kind of drive or document area that you reside in. So here, if I go to a space, I can just right click. We can then create a link. It will go off to your where you specify where your things are, and then you can see that project, and then you can double click, and you can then just create that link into SQL quite easily, and it will be there. Okay, so it's that simple. you know, we do have
SQL doesn't hold
instances.
any actual files. It just holds links to where the files are stored. SQL is just a database, right?
No, it can do both, Chris. So here,
Okay.
you can do a data dump and you can put that file into SQL. So, but why would you if it's 3 meg and you've got it on the system somewhere else? The point is trying to be agile and effective. So you don't have to do that. So that's important. Now, on the right hand side here, now this is really across the system. This is the important part to get, is how you want to use the system and setting up the attributes, how you want to track the information. And when we shipped this before, it was a very kind of simple kind of string of information. But this version, this one I've been working with a client, you can see here it's quite a lot of information. And that's helped them kind of track land-led schemes, early development activity, and put it into one place. Clearly, you can, at the top here, you can color code these and say these are important, these are not, you know, these are nice to know, etc., etc. So you can see here that the project attributes is quite comprehensive. Project status here, you can have, if you've got gateways, gateway 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, stages, whatever, you can put these in. It's up to you of what you require. And then you can see what we're looking at here, approvals, internal approval. So SQL it has the ability to create as many attributes in the various different sections as you wish. So it's kind of working with us to say, where does that, we would advise you where this sits, where the front screen, where is it going to the cash flow, where it going to the kind of the appraisal side. And you can see on this one, we've got pre-planning meetings, and you can put dates in here, and we can put links to documents. So if you've got minutes from a board meeting or some exec meeting that the scheme is going to move forward, then you can kind of create a link to that and put that in here. It's just going to specify exactly what you require. So on this example, I've got pre-planning, I've got a planning, and then again, create the link to the portal to the planning permission within SQL. So your teams are opening SQL on a daily basis, and it's then more in there. That is what they do. You open it, it's there, you create the information, it's more in tune, not it, oh, we have to do this, we've got to update the cash flow once a month, we go into it, we've got to do that. This is what we're trying to say, is this is a piece of kit that works alongside their procedures, their activity, and it'd be more useful to you, to them, and the organization on the reports. So building regulations, those external funding, what's happening, all these again, land detail, build type, what's the contract, has it been done? So there's a lot of things here that are kind of quite, you know, detailed on the front part of the project, and can be updated as it goes. And you can see here color coded on health and safety, and about your utilities even. So early process information. Again, on the left-hand side here, every section in SQL has a detailed notes. So this is where the team can share information of what's happening. And you can see here, I've got some examples of kind of dates of meetings that may have happened, you know, either site meetings that you can create a note on a day, and you can upload it in here and create that. So everybody can see that you had a site meeting, these people attended, oh, here's the notes of it. Again, you can right click, create a link to, you can scan in the document, and then there's the minutes of that meeting. Yeah.
Andrew, just a quick one here. Can you add
Yeah.
project attributes, or are they SDS standard, as in the headings, planning, approval, all of those things?
No, they're all configured by yourselves. They can all be. I'm showing you the front end of SQL, as in the user experience, but there is a back end which you have visibility on called global properties, and in there you can set up all your different headings, all the titles, color code it, and then security code it to, I think there's about 7 different security settings in SQL. always get confused with Proval and SQL, but I think it's about that. So it's completely configurable by you, and this is the point, and that's run by administrators. So the administrators would have training to how to set it up yourself, and then over kind of time you can adjust it and change it, but it's one view of a project. So here, if you, whatever the project is, you'll have this string, you'll see it won't change if it's a land-led scheme, if it's a section 106 scheme, etc., etc. That's kind of, you know, nice improvements that we can think about when we go into the cloud, because we are working diligently hard in the background to actually configure our software into a cloud option, which hopefully will be some kind of testing at the end of this year, maybe kind of early next year, with some deployment with some of our clients sometime next year. So that's important. You have some various other information on screen here that you can use, and these are kind of project dates. So this will kind of be updated from Proval, or you can set them yourself into the system, and then see and track and follow things that are happening on dates. Location, as you can then set this. Oh, the sun's gone in. You can actually see me now, Chris. So you can actually link this back to your browser or Google Maps, and you could then put a pin in and give narrative back to the organization, so other people can see where your projects are on Google Maps, and you can color code them and say, oh, this is in planning, this is a sales scheme, this is completed, etc., etc. Okay. And timesheets is a nice one some people use. So, you know, timesheets is again helping you either track, you know, consultants that are helping you on projects, your time that you're spending on a project. Some people in the past have used it for, they used to do development for other small housing associations, so they track the time on a project for them and charge them accordingly. So it can be used for tracking time, payments, your time, somebody else's time, and it can be used for that process. Everything in SQL has the ability to get it out into quick reports, and you can create your own little report in each section and bring it out and put it into Excel. So if someone asks you for information, you can get it out quickly against all the projects that you are working to and export it out. Example of this is actually notes. You know, quite often you're asked, what are the notes? You can see all the notes here on the various sections on the right hand side of SQL. You can see them and visualize them. You can put them into obviously a print preview, save them and send them off as a so you can quickly get information out. Right, front screen, up to you. It's going to be updated as you bring in information from Proval. Where do we bring it in from Proval? When do we do that? It's in the appraisal section. I'll come back to the cash flow. Here is where you can bring in an appraisal at a given point. As I said, you know, historically, SQL has been used by, it's been board approved, bring it in, that's the appraisal. We've got a folder in Proval to say this is board approved schemes, and you bring it in. But if you're doing a land-led scheme, you might want to, and probably indeed, as soon as you've identified a site, you can start SQL. Why not? You've got attributes to say, we found a site, we're going to put a tender in, we're doing a bid, we've been offered this site, we're looking at it, here's some information about it, here's where it is, and here's our initial appraisal. And that could be stage 1, you know, stage A, whatever you want to call it, gateway 1. And you can bring in your appraisal either from Landval or from Proval. And we can then hold it in there, and you could say this is our first appraisal, had various amount of information. Yes, it will change, but we have a process that you can upload and update it and have a new one. And you can see here, if you brought in different appraisals, it's tracking different dates, different times, and you can see them. And you can have, you know, again in the middle where it says attributes, you can have as many attributes as you require that maps that process. What's happened with this appraisal? Has it been approved? Has it been seen by the pre-team? Is this the version? etc. So, you know, we can have that information in there. But what we're doing is using that information that was in Proval to populate SQL. So it's helping you achieve a few things quickly. If I double click into one of these appraisals, you can see the key elements that we're capturing. This is about kind of the address, the dates that you mentioned, the units, the rents, the how many are there of them, what's the square meterage, that information, and then your first stab at the development cash flow. So the development cash flow in Proval or Landval, it will be taken, and we can use that within SQL as a starting point. And you can then track, follow, and replace or update an appraisal that's in SQL, and you'll see the timelines of that. And again, you've got notes on the right hand side here to that you can make and share with the team of what is happening on those appraisals. From here, we create the working cash flow. So the working cash flow, now this is where we get it when we're actually moving into a kind of development cash flow. The detail has to be linked to your finance system. So whatever finance system you're using, we can work with, because what we're doing is mirroring and matching those account codes from your finance system into SQL. It's not a direct download straight into SQL. It goes into an XLS file, which can be kind of set up as a template and controlled, and they download it into this template and we upload it into SQL. But you can have an abortive cash flow. You could have a cash flow that is not linked to your finance system, that is your starting position, that you might put a budget to. You might say that you're working with your architects, you're working with your designers, you've got a budget of £20,000 on this scheme, and you can then track a standard cash flow with payments, and because you're trying to work up a scheme. Often you're not just taking what has been offered to you. You might have found a site, you're working with the architect, get the best design, and you want to track that payment. And you can then take that payment, put it into your appraisal, and then bring it back in. So you've got a land-led cash flow that is not linked to the finance system. It's just setting one up as a new here and coming in and calling it land-led. My example here is saying that we've taken it from Proval, we're splitting it out into the different tenures. And again, there's a bit of an update that we're doing for the new version, that you can work now seamlessly in a individual tenures and then combine them together, which you can do anyway, but you can work in that combined cash flow, and it will then back allocate it to the individual cash flow. So most people would have probably had a combined cash flow, so they just look at it once, because you've got to, if you think about invoices coming in, you know, invoices coming in, they probably are not linked to the different tenures. You don't have an invoice for affordable, you don't have for shared ownership, but some people are working that through the system. But if you have got that detail in your finance system, we can then mirror and match that here. So you would have different tenures in here. Yeah. Again, attributes, middle section here, you can set up some, and you can see this here as key dates. So the dates that we had in Proval are coming through, and this is imported for you from the appraisal. When we bring it in, then we can press this and we can update the information. And you can then always see we have the original, the revised, and the actual. Up to you, but that's a kind of a standard position. But we can then track, follow what you said was happening to what is happening. You know, we don't really ideally want to replace a date in SQL. We want to have a new one and just say, okay, we said it was going to be this date, but now it's this date. How can we, what's the learning from that? Can we see that on a kind of, on all our schemes? Well, yes, clearly we can, because we can do a report. Anything that's in SQL, we can effectively report on into either a designed report for you, or one of looking at our standard reports to give you an example of what we can do. And we can look at that in a minute. And then again, you've got your notes on the right hand side. So let's get into one of these cash flows and just structurally show you what we can do. So basically, the cash flow is a starting point from what you said in Proval, but clearly things can change, and they often do. Generally, might be the budget might be the same, but the timings have changed. Well, if it's a timing, that's fairly easy to kind of update. We can just kind of move things around in this view. On the left-hand side, you'll see the account code, whether it's income or expenditure. We've got our fixed budget that would be fixed. You know, obviously on mine, I can change it, but generally speaking, your end users wouldn't. The latest estimate could be changed, and we're monitoring the difference between the agreed budget and the latest estimate, and we'll track that at the bottom. And that's our main display on our traffic light. So we're saying in the system, which is hard coded in the system, if our budget or if our latest estimate goes out from our budget by 3%, our traffic light will change to amber. If it goes over 5%, it goes red. So we can then show you quickly if this cash flow is in balance or degree out of some tolerance that we've set. Committed, bit of a legacy thing from the software, to be honest. Some clients still use it actually. It's basically saying you can post a PO against that contractor and that value will come in, and as you pay invoices, it gets reduced. Most people have better invoicing systems now and they don't actually use it, but it's there if you want to. Actuals are saying, well, we've got actuals coming in from our finance system. This at the moment, there isn't any. That's why our color coding on the cash flow is yellow. If it was some actuals coming in, which I'll do in a minute, which will then actually change it to blue, which would be actuals. Yeah, we'll replace it, and the difference of the two will go into balance to forecast. So you can track, follow what exactly is happening. Okay, right. So we've got our cash flow that's been taken from the appraisal. This is our starting point. If things do change, as I said, you've got the tools in Sql to update it. So you can either delay. So if we took our big number, which would be our works cost, wouldn't it? We can delay it for a couple of months. You can see that just moving across. If I wanted to quickly just change all of them, I can highlight all of them and I can just delete it, move it forward a couple of months. Yeah. If I wanted to structurally change it, I could do. I could then just, you can see mine's, I've been playing around with my cash flow generally when I do demonstrations, so they're generally all over the place. But you can move them out. So here I've got this value. I could delete that value, and you can see the 77,000 has gone into red, so it needs to be forecast. And you've got the tools up here to forecast it. So if I highlighted those, I could then just spread it, either a straight line or curve. I know it's acquisition, it doesn't make sense to do that, but it's just for demonstration purposes. But that process you can do on all your codes quite simply and easily. Right, so happy with the cash flow, happy with the timings. We can then bring in some actuals. And if you were doing a land-led scheme, you wouldn't bring in actuals. You might have some account codes actually in your finance system if you do track that, but this would be independent of that. It can be, and you can set your own budget if you're doing kind of working with your architect, and you can then simply just pay money each month of what you intend to or going to do, and then stop it there. Use that total value into your appraisal, what we pays in the architects, and then bring it back in, and then update it from there and start the process, because you're mapping that bit earlier. If you are indeed then intending to obviously develop this scheme, you can then set your cash flow as we've done. We can then bring in some actuals. You can see mine's out of date, and you can see that by the kind of the yellow spend going back. If I go back a bit, explain that a little bit better, we can see that this is yellow, is gone back a month. White here is the current month and going forward. So all these are in, obviously the past. So I can then bring in all the kind of actuals to this point. I can update all cash flows and across all the schemes. So that's generally what people would do. But I'm just, for example, going to show you this one. Bring in the one, mine's out of date. So let's go back a few months. bring it back in. I think it was kind of October, sometime like there. We can show you a couple of things. We can show you the failed transactions because I've got a big file that I can just bring in. Here's some successful ones. Hopefully you can see those. Press the finish button and it will update your cash flow. You might just need to save and reopen it as such, like here. So you can see now that my cash flow is now being changed. It's been updated. The blue figures are actuals, and then the difference of the two goes into balance to forecast. So we're not rebalancing your cash flows going forward. We see that as a development process of someone kind of looking at that. What does that mean to you? I mean, hopefully your development teams are, as soon as they got the invoice, they can update SQL with that position. So there's not a huge variance on a month-by-month basis. But if there were, it will be in here. Now this is saying there's a kind of an underspend. That generally doesn't happen, does it? Too much. So let me just force this to be an overspend, and we can just show that. Say if we've got this going on for the next couple of months. So here's an overspend. So here we're saying that this has gone to a minus figure, and this one's on again a minus figure. There may be some small unders and overs, generally speaking. So it's quite simple, quite quick to easily rebalance that. It's called the auto balance. We used to call it the fudge button. I think that's quite a nice kind of term. So you know, we could then fudge it across the rest of the, or we can balance it quite nicely across the profile spend going forward. Any finance people on this will be cringing probably, but anyway, that's what we do. So we can then easily spread that by hitting the auto balance. So it is quite, you know, it's sophisticated. You can look at it and say, look at the different spend profile in each month and then proportion it accordingly. Okay, so if I hit this, you can see that happening going forward. If there is a big overspend like this, for an example.
A little question for you here, Andrew.
Yeah.
On the S-curve and the straight cash flow forecasting in SQL, is there any plans for bringing in percentage as we use on section 106 land and bill payments in ProVal? Currently, we have to update ProVal into SQL or manually amend the SQL cash plan.
You can do that already.
Okay.
You can put percentages in that cell. Just go 20% and it'll do it.
There we go. There we go. Terry, is that what you meant?
So in the forecasting part here, if I said that I want this to be 5% of that value, I can just go 5% and it does it for me there. Yeah. So in the individual cells, you can do that. I wonder if I'm not sure if you can right click and add no balances. Yeah, so it's more of a function in the cell. So if you wanted 5% in this cell, 5%, and it'll do that for you. I mean, generally speaking, you would have a profile from ProVal and it would have done it for you, but you can redo that in the SQL and the cash flow from here. Does that answer that question?
Great. Yeah, that has satisfied. Brilliant.
Okay.
Thank you. And
so the key thing
any
part
further
here.
questions? How could it be better? Let us know.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, please do. So right, we've got an overspend. Here's an overspend, £21,000 for an example. We can track and follow all those invoices. So if I right clicked on here, I can look at all the invoices. So one of the kind of nice things that SQL gives you is displaying you is every single invoice line. So your teams can see, have full visibility of that. Is it coded correctly? Is it going to the right scheme, to the right project, to the right code? Because it does, you know, these things do sometimes go astray. And if they are, if it's been coded incorrectly, you can export this out to your finance teams, and then you can they can adjust it. And every time we bring in actuals in, they can go back to 3 or 4 months and bring in ones all the time. So you can see that on an ongoing basis. If obviously you've got an overspend, you can then if you have contingency, if we go back to the kind of front of this, we have account code, we have the description of that code. You can color code some codes. Yeah, so you can see here we've got internal costs and we've got contingency. Some clients have contingencies, some don't. It's again up to you with what you want, and you can then move your money from your contingency down to your works cost. And again, that's by VIA. There's you must give it a reason why you're doing that, so we can log that. Everything that you do in the cash flow and certain sections in SQL has a audit trail, so you can easily see and reconcile what's that done, and it's well respected in the industry for that. Oh, I'm gonna sneeze or not? Right, okay, and you can then move that value from the correct cash flow in the same scheme, clearly, to the correct code, and then bring it down to the contingency. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to simply right click and I'm going to update my latest estimate, and then it will give you the new balance that is required. Okay, so here you can see the previous value is X 907, the new value should be 928, and it's asking you for a reason. So you do the normal kind of, oops, I've overspent. Spell this morning. Oops, I've overspent, and then the value then disappears from the balance forecast line and is added to here. You can make as many changes as you wish. If you don't want to save them, you can just X out, press no, and it won't save. It's not a full save. It's a full save now, not a continued save. So if you press save, you can then see we are tracking the difference between the two. That hasn't triggered the traffic light. So if I just kind of force this a little bit more just to display it, you can see if I added another, we can then see that going to red. And now you can see it's gone over the 5% clearly, 5.8%, and that's triggered the traffic light to be changed. And if I come out of the cash flow, you'll see that has been changed. It was updated by me at said time and said day, and there's the cash flow that is out. And if I go back to the front screen, you can see that this cash flow, if it was a particular scheme on its own, you can see the cash flow has gone out, and it's gone red, and that's the cash flow has gone out. So you can see the visualization of that immediately. It's been done. Okay, so your teams can see that. Any questions of the cash flow out there? At the bottom here, the displays are obviously the loan. I'm moving because my other screen's in the way, but the loan, so that's the tracking the difference of the percentage. We redo the total scheme cost, so against what you said in the appraisal or the appraisal you brought in, which is the latest, and the we run the interest, and you can see here quite easily the audit trail as well, and you can stop interest to a certain point of time. Okay, right, we've got 10 minutes left. I thought we would just drop this out, and then we'll go back to where we brought in this appraisal. So currently we can go back to the appraisal, and if I click onto the appraisal, you'll see without going into it what's the updated position on our MPV. So MPV is being recalculated just on cost on this version. So you can see the cash flow is saying X, the appraisal was Y, the difference is there, and you'll see that, and we can then kind of grab that into a report. And if we look at some reports here, if I go to view and we go to reports quickly, what can we do with SQL? Well, if it's in SQL, we can report on it. We have some standard reports that are there, mainly there to give you an idea of what you can do. Don't get too hung up with them if they're in your system and they don't work because the system's been updated and the attributes have changed, or you've changed the attributes. We can work with you to get in the correct reports that you require. These are on our website. You can download them as a PDF to give you an idea, give you a flavor of what is possible. You can connect it to your own reporting depository and get some, really nice funky reports. You can get them in Excel. You can keep them in Excel, and you can pivot table into SQL and get your own reports out. So there's a number of ways to actually get reports out of SQL. For an example, if we look at, a lot of people look at 5-year cash flow. So a 5-year cash flow in here, you click on the report, you can see the information. This is obviously looking at all your schemes. You can then just, do a little search here, a little filter of just one scheme if you want to do that, or you can display all of them. You can set it to run, you can export it, or you can simply preview it. So if I just preview this as an example for today, you can see, and I submit the information, if it's any 3 lines, it will just take them away. You can then see the combined position of your 5-year cash flow of all your schemes and the various information and the month-by-month spend and the total in each year totaled up. Remember, we can link SQL cash flow to bricks or your business planning, and there's a utility that we've developed that will specify the objects in bricks, and then we can then, for finance people, send that information out quarterly, monthly, once a year, to keep you updated. So there's quite a comprehensive kind of utility process that you can do in here. If we look at perhaps a cost to completion, version 2 been updated fairly recently. I think Paul's been working on with a kind of client. We can work with you on this. Again, quite detailed, just showing you what's possible. Again, you can just look at the various different statuses. You don't have to look at all the ones, you can just look at the ones on site or the ones in your land-led pipeline. You can then see any kind of activity from your attributes. When was it approved? When was the sign off? What stage is it at? All this can come in to a report, and you've got the various budget to latest estimate on the key acquisition works, professional fees, and at the end of this, we can then do it slowly, Andrew, because my eyes go all funny. You can then do the NPV. So we can do internal rate of return and payback. And I just wanted to finish on, actually, let me just do a screenshot of I've got it here, over here somewhere. He says, right, yeah, that'll be good. Right. Okay, so can you see that, Chris? Just let me know, because dragging it over doesn't always work. Yeah, great. Okay, so this is the test version of SQL, and this is what they're working on and making sure it does work, that you can have an outturned calculator, and then on the right hand side here, you can then see the updated IRR and the NPV, and obviously the loan repaid year. So this is the new part in SQL that the guys are testing in the office, make sure it's working before it's being released, and that will be telling you, the calculator in SQL to give you an updated position against income as well as just cost as well. So that's going to be a really good addition in SQL. Right, okay, that's probably enough for me talking. So I'll kind of open it up to any further questions. Obviously, we haven't got through everything in SQL. We're doing a session next week, and we're going to be concentrating on the workflow, the people, and the property. How's that? Are there any questions, any observations?
Yeah, so as Andrew said, this is next week. You'll find details of that on our weekly webinars page on the website. I'm just on it right now. So this is a whole page we've been given. You'll see our upcoming webinars. So we're going to be following this one up, well, on the 21st of April. Today's the 14th. And this is going to be about SQL workflows and build schedules. And then on the 5th of May, we have one that I'm very personally happy about, and it's viability meets the architect. So this is a question, when is it a good time to work with architects? When do you bring them in? Because we've seen a number of different scenarios played out, all with strengths and advantages. So we've secured a number of architects so that they can come on and tell you how they would prefer to work with you. And of course, you can take that in your stead. I've got another question here. We're just going to go back to that, and it's Terry Hibbard. When we can look at transactions in cash flow, is it possible to add the invoice from finance rather than just the details?
Sorry, say that again.
Is it possible to add the invoice from finance rather than just the details? So can we put the actual invoice into it from finance? Does that make sense?
Well, we are taking the actual invoice from finance, from your ledger. So we're taking them, when finance put it onto your finance system, that's a one-stop shop that they do. We're taking that information and pulling it in. But what we're doing is not just taking the total, we're taking the individual invoice information. So when we, if we go into here, if I right click, the transaction file.
I have to make you presenter again.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. So
back to you.
Yeah. See that? So this information is coming from your ledger with the invoices information that we've taken. And if you've got more information, and if you've indeed got a link to that invoice, if that's what you're saying, yes, we can display it in here. Some of the newer systems, you can take the URL, the link to that invoice, and we can display in here. So you can click on that and actually see the invoice. Is that? I think that's what she may have been saying. That is possible on some of the newer finance updates that's happened.
Okay, so you need the latest version of SQL for that.
Finance systems.
The latest finance systems.
Yeah, their finance system they're using, some of them allow links to the invoices so you can display it in other systems. It's
okay, so this is all really dependent on your finance, the software you're using. So something like Aggresso can do that, right, Andrew?
I don't know. I don't know about the finance systems. I'm not, don't know what they do. All I know is we take the information from the ledger. If it's on the ledger, if the information is there, we take all the information there, not just the total. So you can display, you can see all the individual invoices from there.
Okay. Excellent. Okay, well, look, we're coming up to 11 o'clock. I think thank you, Andrew. You've done a great job of taking us through. Thank you to everyone who has engaged with us today. And yeah,
I suppose, Chris, just to say, really, we like to every now and again do demonstrations of our software. This is one of those those ones, a bit more direct information about our software, but we're here to help. If you guys, are struggling or need a bit more support on using SQL, visualizing it, doing a bit of coaching with us, and then please talk to us. If you want a demonstration or hearts and minds of your team to get re-engaged and what's possible, I'm happy to help as much as possible.
Andrew's a great motivator for that.
I try, not too much when I've got a cold, but I do.
Excellent. Okay, well, everyone, I will let you get back off to your day. Thank you so much for giving us your time and joining us today. And yeah, we will hopefully see you next week where we continue this. So yes, I will let you all go now. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.